Standard 1, teachers demonstrate leadership. So, under this standard, there are 5 different areas wherein teachers can demonstrate their leadership. The first one being in the classroom, the second one being in their schools, the third throughout their profession. You see how it's growing bigger. And then the fourth one is about advocating for schools and students, and the fifth being about the code of ethics and the standards for professional conduct, which of course is to say that we can't be really good leaders if we're not modeling certain kinds of behaviors from ourselves. So I'm going to discuss evidences because, of course, all we have to do is to go to the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction and read the description for each of these. But I want to help you to prepare for being evaluated in these regards along the lines of the standards by having some clear-cut evidences. All right, so that's what I'm going to talk through now is a set of evidences that point to your leading in the classroom. You're being a teacher as a leader in the classroom. So I have noted documenting calls that you make to parents as one of the things, because one of the things that matters to us, of course, is that we have a well-run classroom and organized at a respectful kind of environment such that students can learn. And we do know that classroom management is key, and that sometimes if a student is not abiding by the rules in the classroom, that it does get in the way of not just his or her own learning, but that of others. And so we have to make calls to parents as one of the ways to address that. Keeping a log of those calls is very, very important. So I suggest that that's the first thing you do there is to put the date, the person that you actually talked with, whether it's the mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, and a summary of what was accomplished. So just a few notes about that conversation. If there were any commitments made, like a parent said, okay, I'll make sure I check his reading every Thursday if that's what you want me to do, or commitment that you might have made to the parent to send a progress report at the end of each week, but make that note. That is a really, really good evidence that you are taking leadership as a teacher for your classroom and for your students' progress. The second one is very similar. So when you have some issues with students that you feel like you need some help with, you sometimes go to the guidance counselor, or sometimes you go to the school psychologist or a social worker. Again, make a note of those conferences, when the conference was held, with whom you spoke, what was the subject matter, and what kinds of results are you expecting? Were there plans to meet again? Just log all of that. Keep that as a record of intervention that you've applied to a specific situation or student, all in the effort of getting that student where he or she needs to be to do his best schoolwork. Number 3, use varied types of data to measure your students' progress. So a lot of times, we depend on quizzes and tests way too much when a lot of students, just because of their learning styles, can show us more about what they know through performance. Maybe a student is really good with memorization and recitation. So that student might do well being measured for something with a presentation to the class or doing a demonstration. Perhaps projects where students have the opportunity to collaborate and to put their heads together and to think through something that way. And then you mill around the room as they're doing this and make some assessments and measurements of their growth and development in an area. But be very, very sure to have a well-rounded mix of evaluation measures and techniques. That shows really good leadership on your part as a teacher. Then the fourth one, write a clear plan that describes your classroom environment. And I think this is really, really important. It's one thing for us to say, oh, I want this classroom that just feels very zen, very comfortable, turn the lights out and let the students be calm and all of that. That's fine if that's what you like. Another teacher might say, oh, I like some music going when my students are drawing or when they're writing or whatever it is. That's fine. Put it down in writing. Have a clearly written plan for what your classroom should feel like, should sound like, should look like. So when an administrator or a parent walks in your classroom and they see students moving around and you're not bothered by it, and you know that it's good walking around, they too will know because it's there in that description, which you actually can hand to them. Okay, you certainly can share it with your mentor or your principal or assistant principal when you're sitting down for evaluation, and they'll understand what it is you want to accomplish. Now, might it need to be adjusted and revised with their suggestions? Yes. And then you do just that. Keep your original one and then add your notes for revision, say in November. By November, you'll know your students better. You'll know better whether you can really allow them to move around as much as you want them to or as much as you foresaw in August when school started. And then by the time May comes, you will have seen this whole thing develop even more. Just that demonstrates leadership on your part. The fact that you continue to take a look at this and tweak it based on new information that you're getting from these students and about these students every single day. That's leadership, using that information to inform new actions. And the fifth one I have listed here is for you to list some ways that you empower students. Because again, that's a part of leadership. To grow leaders demonstrates leadership on your part. To want to develop leadership in others is a part of what good leaders do. And so I'd like for you to mention 3 ways that you empower students, which simply means help them to develop their sense of leadership. Help them to develop their voices. Help them to develop having a position and a conviction, but also staying open and ready to share perspectives. All of that is about empowerment. But I'd like to see you list 3 concrete ways. One might be where you'd say, I allow my students to answer me in a very divergent sort of way, as opposed to answering me with yes, no, uh-huh, which is something all of us should do as teachers. Ask questions, maybe not every single question we ask, but ask many of our content-related questions, questions that we're posing to see where students are in their learning, in their understanding of a concept. Those questions should, many times, be divergent so that you can see what's going on in that student's head. They're able to say more than yes and no. Another way that you could talk about empowering students is through the kinds of assignments that you give. Perhaps rather than assigning a paper that's 500 words and only one topic, you give them 3 topics from which they will choose one. That allows students a sense of power and authority to choose something that feels good to them to write about, something to which they have some affinity or make some kind of connection. So those are 2 examples of how I would seek to develop this empowerment or this leadership in my students. I'd like for you to list 3 of those. So this concludes this talk on evidences for leading in the classroom under Standard 1.